Good morning. Thank you all for hopping in and joining us. Will and I have a very special guest today. The voice of Colorado football and men's basketball, Mark Johnson, is joining us. We're going to talk sports and maybe food and hobbies and whatever else tickles our fancy today. If you are watching this after recording, we would love your feedback. If you can give it a thumbs up, we would certainly appreciate that. And my co-host is fashionably late today. Apparently 10 a.m. for a growing 9-year-old is a little early in the morning. But without further ado, I want to introduce Mark Johnson, voice of our Colorado Buffaloes. Mark, good morning.
It's great to be out with you guys. And don't feel bad about that. I've actually had color analysts. I had one a number of years ago who showed up at halftime of a basketball game I was doing. So you're in good company there, Jebby. So Will, you showing up late, you're in good company as well. But we understand when you're that age, it's awful tough to get up when school's out and summer vacation is happening. So I fully understand it.
Awesome. Will, can you say good morning?
Good morning.
Good morning, Will.
We'll wake him up here. All right. So, Will, I've got some of our questions here. Do you want to, let's maybe start there and go from there?
Okay.
You need some coffee?
How did you get into sports broadcasting?
Well, I'm a North Dakota native, and I grew up, in a farming community. I was born in a little town called Hillsboro, North Dakota, which is right on the Minnesota border in between Grand Forks and Fargo, North Dakota. As a boy, then moved into town and always had my eye set on doing something from a broadcasting standpoint. When I tell the story, I always tell people there were kind of three things I was thinking about coming out of high school. I was going to be a sportscaster. I was going to be a pastor, which is a big part of my life now, or I was going to be a high school coach and teacher kind of thing. So all three things would have involved speaking. And my old joke, being a very bold and open Christian, has always been that the Lord knew that nobody needed the Lord more than the media did, so he sent me to the media. So I got into sportscasting, and I'll be honest with you guys, it was kind of an interesting deal. If anybody's ever seen the movie Fargo, and Will, you're much too young for that, but your dad's with the kind of the North Dakota, Minnesota accent, which is very real in that part of the country. And as a boy, I used to watch Tom Brokaw, who was the NBC News, nightly news anchor for NBC Network. And I kept thinking, he doesn't sound anything like the people that I live around do. And so I have to sound more like him than I do them. And so as a very young boy, I started thinking about that whole accent thing and trying not to have, you think about growing up in that part of North Dakota and Minnesota. And that's kind of that folks back there have. And so I worked very hard not to have that so that I could expand out and kind of move around the country and have more kind of a neutral appeal, if you will, from a vocal standpoint. So it was something I always wanted to do. And like a lot of us in this business who are broadcasters and do a lot of play-by-play, I was the kid while we were playing baseball or something, or pick up basketball. I was the guy who was announcing the game while we were playing. And it was just something that became very natural as a young man that I wanted to get into. And I've been blessed to kind of live that dream and call some great moments. And obviously being the voice of the Buffs has turned out to be my dream job that I didn't know that I wanted before I got it. And it's been great being here in Colorado now for 17 years.
Well, you answered one of our questions, because one of them I wrote down is Colorado, is this your dream job? So maybe we can kind of hop over to that one. That was one we had written down.
Well, and I'll tell you what, Jebby, it's interesting. Prior to coming here, I was at Syracuse University. I got the job at SU in 2000, and it would have been the fall of 2002. And I got to the same time a guy named Carmelo Anthony did. Just months later, I was calling a national championship down in New Orleans at the Superdome. And that was kind of a big break career-wise for me. Now, when I got to Syracuse, I thought it was phenomenal. I mean, Syracuse is a sportscasting factory. If you know what the Newhouse School of Communications is, it's a sportscasting factory. And I came from outside the family, and I got that opportunity, and I was blessed enough to call the national championship. And was really thinking that's where I was going to stay for a long, long time. I was very happy there. Upstate New York is beautiful. Very much enjoyed Syracuse. Had some other opportunities regionally that would have kept me in that area. And for whatever reason, those things didn't work out. Now, after the national championship, I got a phone call from KOA Radio in Denver and the Denver Broncos about coming in and pinch hitting on some Broncos games for the 2003 season. There was 3 games, and I was able to do 2 of them according to my schedule. I did one game. The Broncos played at Houston, and the other game they played in Champaign, Illinois. That was when Soldier Field was getting refurbished, and the Bears were playing down there. And so I got a chance, and I was very excited about that. Growing up in North Dakota, there's no major market there from a media standpoint. And so you always look to Minneapolis to the east and Denver to the west. And I always had my eyes on Denver and thought, boy, if I could get out to Colorado, I think I'd very much enjoy that, being an outdoorsman and all the things I'm involved with. And so that was really a dream come true. And I got the opportunity after I did the Broncos games. I get a phone call saying, how would you like to move here full time? And I jumped at that opportunity, despite the fact that I was extremely happy in Syracuse. And got out here and just, for obvious reasons, fell in love with it. Everything I anticipated was true. Love being part of the University of Colorado. Love being the voice of the Buffs, living in the mountains as I do. And so, like I said, it was something I anticipated. I didn't understand it was going to be my dream job and opportunity and place to live. And then I got out here and realized it was better than I even dreamed it would be. And so that's why, 17 years later, after bouncing around quite a bit and trying to move up the ladder, when I got here, got established, and understood what this place is all about, what being a Buff is all about, what the University of Colorado and Boulder are all about, I just totally fell in love with it. And I'll tell you a real quick story. A number of years ago, I got a pretty nice opportunity, phone call about a job, and I sat down with my wife and I said, what do you think, after we kind of talked over the details? And she finally said, I think you should take the job. And I said, really? And she said, yes, we'll come and visit, but you go ahead and take the job. So she made it very clear she wasn't living here either. So that pretty much cemented it. I'm a Buff for life now. I'm not going anywhere.
We are thrilled to have you. I think because you worked alongside Zim at the beginning. Is that correct?
Yeah, for 12 years. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because he kind of stepped out. I'm trying to remember my CU history there, but because he kind of stepped out of the play-by-play role, correct?
Yeah, so it would have been, like I said, 2004 is my first season. And so unbeknownst to me, I mean, this was all happening, when I'm still out in upstate New York, and so I'm not privy to the conversations. But, yeah, there was a conversation that doing play-by-play, there comes a point when it's going to hit me in a number of years here, right? When you start to have trouble keeping up with the pace of things because it is so fast. And so there have been some conversations about Zim kind of moving over to the number 2 chair. And so when they brought me on board, I jumped in and did the play-by-play. And I made it very clear at that point in time, by the way, that I was not the voice of the Buffs in 2004. That was Larry Zimmer. I was the play-by-play guy. And once he then retired here 5-6 years ago, then it's okay to call me that. But until that point in time, and it's funny, Jimmy, on when you respect somebody like Zim, like I do, even to this day, Zim still does a little kind of a historical piece on our pregame show for football. And I've been asked about it because, people always say, well, you always refer to Zim as the legendary voice of the Buffs. And I said, well, that's because he's always going to be that to me. And longtime fans like you, he's always going to be it to you. Somebody like Will, he's grown up and he's only known my voice. And, and that's great. And I appreciate that when young people come up to me and, there's been students on campus that have stopped me and said, I've been listening to you my whole life. And number one, I'm flattered. Number two, it makes me feel really old. And then I start thinking about it. Well, they're probably 19 years old and I've been here 17. So sure, their whole life, I'm all they know. But for older folks, they remember Zim. And I'm never going to disrespect his history and his legendary career. And so we did work together for 12 years. I enjoyed every minute of it. Now, we worked together in football. Zim wasn't doing basketball. I had various people that helped me on the basketball side. But having him sitting there for a guy that comes in here, I was 37 years old in 2004. And sitting alongside of him and, being able to just glean from his history and experience, and he'd fill the cracks in of things that I didn't know or understand. It was such an enormous benefit and blessing to me at that point in time to be able to sit there and just, feed off of that wealth of knowledge all those years. And, and now we replace him with Gary Barnett, who's got, similar knowledge. And so I get that opportunity. And then on top of it, Gary's one of the most football knowledgeable pieces I've ever been around as well. So, yeah, I really kind of been blessed in that football booth for 12 years with Zim and now the last 5 with Gary, being able to learn a lot from those guys. It's been a lot of fun for me.
Coach Barnett's great. I had an opportunity to. We used to live in Colorado Springs, and there was a dinner down at the Broadmoor, and so I was fortunate enough to attend that a couple different times. And one year got to sit at Coach's table, and for me, just to be able to sit back and listen to the stories that he was telling, and it was very cool for as a fan, and also someone who I played, but that was low level high school football. So to hear someone just with the knowledge and the stories, it's fascinating to hear those people. I love story time, and when you got good storytellers, and Coach Barnett was definitely one of them.
It's crazy when he walks the booth every week. I'll give you a little kind of inside baseball kind of view of our broadcast booth. So Gary every week, and I've said many times, Gary's forgotten more football than I'll ever know. All right, and so he'll walk in the booth, and we've gotten to the point now for 5 years where I go, "What do you got for me today?" Because he would start walking in when we first started doing games together and be like, "Wait till I tell you what I stumbled upon tonight." He'll be breaking down film or be looking at stats, and a lot of times early on he'd throw a stat out. And I look at him and say, "All right, well, what does that mean? How does that apply to what we're talking about today, what we're going to talk about?" And his insight and knowledge and how he understands the game and how he breaks it down and what he sees that you and I don't see is really phenomenal. And it's been a PhD in football working with Gary now for 5 years because, like I said, I mean, he sees things and he'll walk in with the most – it'll seem like the most irrelevant number. And I'm like, well, I don't understand. And so then he'll tell me, well, this is how it applies. And it just opens your eyes up to the game. And so, yeah, we've really, like I said, between Sam and Gary, we've really been blessed, I think, here in the Colorado area on a Saturday afternoon, getting a chance to listen to those two guys. First off, the history, and then for Gary, the nonstop, football insight and knowledge. One of the first games we did together, and everyone talks about Tony Romo and kind of predicting the plays or talking about what's coming up. One of the first games we did together, Gary, I'm not even sure if he realized he was doing it. They'd be walking up to the line of scrimmage, and I'd be, setting the play, and it's first down and 10 for the 25, and this kind of, and Gary'd say screenplay, and I'd call the play, and they'd run a screen, or draw play, or they're going to go deep, or something. And finally, about the fifth or sixth time he did that, I said, "Hey, Nostradamus, cut it out. You're ruining the drama for the rest of us here." But he was seeing it, what was happening by the alignment, and fully understanding the game as he does. He was able to see what was coming. And I think it's a great insight when we talk about these kind of things on the air, because it gives people an understanding. It's so easy for us to sit in the stands and we go, "Oh, Coach X, he stinks. I know what he's calling every time." Well, no, you don't. Okay, you don't. You think you do, but you don't. But to see somebody actually sit there and be predicting the plays and knowing what's going to happen, it really is interesting how much those coaches understand and see the game and understand exactly what's happening and why it's happening, and can predict as soon as they see the alignment out there. And so, yeah, it's been fun sitting next to him and kind of watching and learning from him in that regard.
Yeah, I can only imagine. That would be amazing to just be kind of in that company, and the football that you've seen these last 17 years, sprinkled in some great seasons and some rough ones, but
you're being kind now. You're being kind.
we are a loyal fan base, so we get Folsom Rock, and we'll get to the football stuff here in a little bit, but I'm very enthusiastic about the trajectory of where we are right now.
Yeah, amen.
So I'm happy about that. Will, let's see what else. Ooh, how about this one?
Yeah. What's your favorite game?
Okay, hold on. Get your yawn out. Try again.
What is your favorite game you've called?
Favorite game? Are you being specific about football or basketball or both? What do you think?
What do you want?
Football.
Football, please,
Football.
Mark.
All right. Well, I think there's a couple of ways to answer that one. And again, as you pointed out, when we talk about the golden era of Colorado football, and you guys know the history as well as I do, there have been phenomenal moments and periods, right, in this program. And you guys are right. You're flying the flags there today. During my 17 years, as Jimmy, as you just pointed out, we've had moments. We've had the 2016 season was phenomenal. We all enjoyed that under Mike McIntyre, winning the Pac-12 South. But outside of that, I mean, think about this. I get here in 04, so 04 and 05, Gary's the head coach. We win the Big 12 North those 2 years, playing a bowl game. Gary gets let go. Dan Hawkins comes in. Was it, ancient history, 06 or 07 to win to a bowl game under Dan Hawkins. And then that thing kind of bottomed out. And then it was a long run getting back to a bowl. And so there was some rough years in there. So there wasn't a lot of great sustained periods over the course of that time. So obviously that 2016 season was enjoyable for all of us. I mean, that was a great ride. It was exciting. There were some phenomenal performances throughout that. We enjoyed all of that. I think back to when he asked me about one moment, I always think back to that game when Dan Hawkins was here and the Buffs beat number 3 Oklahoma at Folsom Field. Kevin Eberhardt kicked a game-winning field goal at the end of that ball game. And I think that might be the most fun moment because if you remember that contest, the Buffs had to come back. We were down. Oh goodness, I'm terrible at going back and remembering details. That was the one thing about Zim. Zim would look at me and he'd say, "Hey, remember the game in 2007? And it was 3rd down and 2 from the 20." I'm like, Larry, I don't remember 2007 to be honest with you. And so I'm never real good at going back in details. But when the game's over for me, I kind of hit the dump button in my head. It's kind of we do television after our radio broadcast, and I always have to look at the producer and say, "What was the score again?" I can't remember anything. But I think it was. That Oklahoma game, we came back, and I want to say we were down at least a couple of touchdowns, maybe 17 points.
I feel like it was 24-10-ish, something like that.
Sounds right. Yeah, that sounds right. You would remember better than I would, I guarantee you. And we come back and win that game, and then, the student section pours out of the field, and I didn't necessarily mean it as a dig, but it turned out to be that way when I said when we called the game winner and the crowd goes nuts, pours in the field, and I said Bedlam and Boulder. I had a lot of Oklahoma State fans that dropped me a line and said, "Hey, we appreciated giving a shot to Oklahoma because of the Bedlam series." But that might be my favorite football moment because it was so unexpected. Number 3 team in America, Oklahoma was thinking national championship that year, and the Buffs came back and beat them at home. So that might be my favorite football game that I've called, since coming on board.
So I remember that day very well. I was fly fishing in Steamboat that morning and kind of planned my day about getting off the water to go catch the game. I don't remember exactly where in Steamboat, but we caught the game in Steamboat. So a great day of catching fish in the morning and watching the Buffs walk it off. And the little bar tavern or whatever we were at, more and more people slowly kind of came in and were gravitating towards the TV. I think there was 1 or 2 TVs in there. And by the end, you had 25, 30 people losing their minds. Half of them weren't Colorado fans. It was a blast. That was a great one.
Yeah, great moment. And, there have been a few others I think back to. The West Virginia game comes to mind. And there were since I've been here, some great matchups with CSU, obviously, and the Rocky Mountain Showdown. And so there have been some fun moments. Watching Philip Lindsay over the course of his career, what Cepho Lufau did, as a quarterback, Steven Montez. So, we've had some great receivers come through and obviously some phenomenal defensive backs during that Mike McIntyre era. So there have been some great moments, some great plays. The victory at Oregon in 2016 comes to mind as I think about it. But that Oklahoma game, that was awful special the way it unfolded.
Well, yeah, that year, they're kind of flooding back. Philip Lindsay is a house favorite here.
Sure.
We were on a tour of the Champions Center. It would have been right before Phil's senior year.
All right. And
so we're getting a tour. We bump into Rick George. He hops in, and I'm like, why is it was so kind of him because he's spending time with us. Yep. We're not some big highfalutin donors, and he walked us through half the tour, and he said, "You guys want to come up to my office?" Sure. And you obviously are familiar with his office. He's got all his things from when he was here in the late 80s and early 90s to his time with, was it golf and the Rangers? And he's like, "Oh yeah, and Matthew McConaughey is my buddy." And we're sitting there going, "What?" But on the tour, we ran into Philip Lindsay, and he went out of his way, came in, started chatting up with the boys, probably had, a good 3, 4, 5 minute conversation with him. And it stuck out to us that, it's summertime. He's in there to get in a workout, and he felt like it was worth his time to come by and say hello. So Phil is a household favorite. We're also Bronco fans, so we were a little bit crushed to see him leave, but he is definitely the Colorado kid. We love Phil.
Well, and the thing, and I'm glad you told that story, because the thing you learn about Philip Lindsay is he will go down as one of the most genuine athletes I've ever covered. And I can't say that about all athletes. I mean, some guys are real good about, when the red light of the camera comes on, they do their thing, and then they're a different person off. Phil was just that way. The thing that makes Phil special is the passion he has. And, Mike McIntyre told that great story. Because remember, when Matt got here, Philip had already been offered. And so then Mike McIntyre has to go visit this young man and walks in. I remember Phil's got the bad knee at that time, got the injury. And, he's not the biggest guy in the world. And Mike has told the story many times when he was here. They walked in and looked at his kid like, oh, my goodness, really? This is what he's damaged goods to begin with, and he's a tiny little guy. And this is who they offered a scholarship to, and they want me to honor the scholarship. And then he sits down and talks with the young man for, whatever it was, an hour and a half, whatever. And the passion just exudes from Phil. And that's why we all love Phil, because he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's genuine. He's passionate. He was passionate about being a Buff. He was passionate about being a Bronco. And that's not something you teach. And that's why we all loved him. And it was always great to, see him, because I knew that he'd do those kind of things with fans walking through. If I came through in a tough situation, we needed an interview, I'd say, Phil. And he'd look at me like, Mark, I don't want to do it, but I'm going to do it because, I represent the Buffs. And so that's why we all love Phil. That's why he's going to go down as not only one of your favorites, but one of my favorites that I'll ever cover when my career's over.
Yeah, he's a legend. We're pretty avid sports cards collectors, and Philip Lindsay, I did collect it as a kid, and then it petered out. And then when Phil got in the league 3 years ago now, I was like, I kind of want a Philip Lindsay card. He's, and much to my wife's chagrin, that has turned into a pretty avid hobby where all the boys kind of jumped in and they've got their various favorite players. But I can
remember the first OK patch card I ever got.
Yep.
Chosen Rosen.
Yep. So we have a huge appreciation for him. I think I blocked the black helmet back there is signed by Phil. So we're excited. The other ones, our other favorite, Laviska. I know you can't see the autographs, but
okay. He was one of those guys, so in my career, I mentioned being at Syracuse. So I had a chance to cover, obviously Carmelo Anthony for the national championship run there in 2003. So when I think back over the 30, 35 years I've been doing this, there are a lot of guys, NFL and NBA guys, but Laviska is going to go down as one of the physically most impressive human beings I've ever been around, right? And I'll never forget. I'll give you another Gary Barnett story. So, Viska had been here, and then his little brother, Levante, shows up on campus, and Gary and I are standing at one of the first practices of camp when Levante first got here, and we're standing there, and all of a sudden he runs by, and Gary looks, and this is the way camp works for us. We stand out in the sidelines together while we're watching the team, and I'm telling Gary who the players are, and he's telling me what I should be looking at. Okay, that's where the conversation goes, and so this young man goes running by, and Gary goes, "Holy cow, who's that?" And I said, "That's Laviska's little brother." And he says, "MJ, genetics are an amazing thing, aren't they?"
Right.
And so Laviska is one of those guys, though, that just we use the phrase all the time, a man amongst boys. And when he got here as an 18-year-old kid, he was a man amongst boys at that time, and obviously he's proving that in the NFL already right now. So. Awful impressive. But yeah, he was the most dynamic athletes I've ever had a chance to cover.
We feel the same way. Let's see. This would have been 2018, 2019. I'm trying to remember. But my nephew was out, and as a freshman, we took him on an unofficial visit, and we got to go down on the field against Washington State. So that must have been probably 3 seasons ago now. 2018 maybe. Anyway, so we're down on the field, and my nephew, he's a freshman. He's a freshman quarterback. He's pretty slight, not a real big kid. And how eye-opening it was for him, because he's going into his senior year now and still has aspirations playing college football. But he kind of looked around, and one of the first people we saw on the field was Lavishka, because when you're on those visits, you get to go out down on the field before the game and see Ralphie run. So as a proud uncle, that was one of the coolest moments I've ever had, to be on the field as she's running and turning the corner. But standing next to Lavishka, and then, his eyes got as big as saucers, because, Lavishka, that would have been his sophomore year, I believe. I'm just trying to do it because he was healthy that year.
Yeah.
And, my nephew's just in awe. And then my nephew turns around, and Nate Landman's right behind him. And he just kind of, like, you could just see him trying to process what was going on. And he made the comment to me. He goes, "I have no desire to get hit by someone like that."
I fully understand that. Yeah.
Landman's got, the old throwback neck thing, and he's big to begin with. And yeah, that was very, very eye-opening to appreciate, how big and strong and fast these athletes are.
Jimmy, that's the thing that people don't really understand, is what we're talking about. In my role, I frequently hear from a mom and dad or a grandparent or somebody that says, my son or daughter, is a pretty good athlete. They're not getting recruited. One comes to mind. A number of years ago, I get a phone call when I was still working at KOA, and I get a phone call on my office line one day, and this guy's telling me about his son. He's a heck of a basketball player. And I said, "Oh, okay." And so I said, "Well, it's just not getting any attention." I said, "Well, tell me about him." He said, "Well, he's a 6'1" center." And I said, "Well, hold on a second right there." All right. And people don't understand, generally speaking. I mean, and think about this. When you get to CU's level, a Power 5 conference, the athletes are unbelievable. And then you go to the next level, if you're talking the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball, and they are freaks of nature. I mean, you might have heard, I use this line all the time. I always said, I'm not sure what planet that guy's from, but it's not this one. Okay. And when you're dealing with a Philip Lindsay, a Nate Landman, a Laviska Chenault, a Chauncey Billups, and Alfred Williams, just take all the great names in Colorado history. These people are different. They're different physical beings than you and I are. Kind of I played college basketball, and I don't even count myself in the same category as that level of athlete, because they're just so gifted. And then on top of it, when magic hits is when you've got, the great physical attributes, and then you've got the great attitude and work ethic to go along with it. That's when magic happens with those kind of people. But they're phenomenal to watch, and I'm awed every single time, whether I'm doing a college game for the Buffs or, doing something for one of the networks, doing an NFL game. When you watch these athletes, I still, this long into my career, have not lost the awe factor of being amazed by what I see and how they move and how explosive they are and how physical they are. I've said many times, standing on the sideline of an NFL game, I'm stunned somebody doesn't lose their life out there. The collisions, the speed, the size, the violence, it's amazing to me. And then you get on the sideline of an NBA game and you see what those people are doing out there and how they move and how athletic they are. It's really an interesting deal. And I don't think a lot of times the average person understands the giftedness of what we're watching when they're out there at the high levels,
I was fortunate enough, my next door neighbor and one of my best friends growing up, he played linebacker at CU during the mid-90s. And I knew he was something special in fourth grade playing tackle football. I just know because he was bigger, he was stronger, he was faster than everyone. And, you kind of thought, oh, well, we'll catch up. Nope.
It's an amazing thing when you hit that genetic lottery, and why, we've all seen, there are plenty of families, I can think of, 10 of them off the top of my head, where, one sibling is just gifted in that regard, another one's, gifted another way, but it's not. So it's always an interesting thing how I always call it the genetic lottery, do you if it hit right and the mix was right, boy, they become very special athletes. And you see families where every sibling seems to be a big time. The McCaffreys come to mind. Everybody's an athlete in that family. And it's really an amazing thing. But yeah, they're the people that play at that level. I don't care if you're talking NBA, WNBA, NFL, Major League Baseball, whatever it is, the Olympics.
McCaffrey.
Those are, and CU, we're so, think about the Olympic athletes we get a chance to watch at the University of Colorado. Jenny Simpson and Emma Coburn and on down the line, the phenomenal athletes, the runners and steeplechase and all the different things that we get a chance to see. It's a lot of fun to watch. That's why I've always been so enamored by sports, because it's watching somebody do something that you and I can't do, right? I can't go out and do what Jenny Simpson does. I can't go out and do what Magnus Bowe does. I can't go out and do what, like I said, Philip Lindsay, did. I mean, we just can't even, I can't even relate to it in terms of how you move that way and how you're able to have that kind of stamina or be a skier or whatever it might be. And so that's why I'm always enamored by sports, because I get a chance to watch and cover and talk about people that do things that you and I can't do.
Yeah, it is fun. And I think that's why there's so much enjoyment from sport, is because you're seeing, the unbelievable, and you're kind of waiting for that moment to happen. And that's why we watch. We watch for the drama. We watch for, we're passionate about our team. But being able to witness, that event when we talked about the Oklahoma game, I wasn't there in person, but I remember exactly where I was when Cordell Stewart chucked the ball 700 yards at Michigan, sitting in my parents' basement, and that was my freshman year.
Yeah.
The Orange Bowl, the national championship, and having this like, oh no, he just took it back.
Yep.
And then the one person at our watch party, I think I saw a flag. And then there was a flag, and then the kick gets called back. And the elation of winning, witnessing and winning. And that's when I was like, I'm going to Colorado. After that national championship game, I think I was 13 or 14 years old.
You just touched on something about the value of sports. And I know it's a topic we hear all the time about, so much money is spent on sports and on and on and on. Well, the first thing is that the money that's spent on sports is not university money, it's athletic money. And they do a great job of, the income coming into an athletic department runs the athletic department. But the other thing is the value of those moments. You just said it. I'm 13, 14 years old watching a national championship game and made the decision right there. We've seen that over and over and over again in sports when, think in recent years, some unlikely schools that have gone, Butler going to the Final Four 2 years in a row, or, I'm losing somebody. George Mason went a few years ago. And every one of those institutions reports the next year their enrollments go up because it's such a great advertisement and promotion of that institution. And then you have an emotional connection because of that, which makes it even more powerful. And that's why sports is so great. It's good for universities. It gives them exposure. I've always said one of the things, if you're good in sports, Tad Boyle has a great year in basketball. Well, all those alums out there want to write a quick check. They don't all go to athletics, boy. A lot of them go to the institution and academics. It's good for everybody on campus when sports is doing well. And that's why, what Rick George is doing, you talked about Rick earlier, and I'm a huge fan of his. The great job he's doing, and that athletic department is coming and building, and it's getting better and better and better. And that's good for everybody in Boulder, I guarantee you. Yeah,
it is. And like I said, we've been gone from Colorado coming on 11 years here, and try and get back for at least a football game a year. It doesn't always work out, but and seeing the transformation in and around Folsom and getting that tour of the Champion Center, and how the vision of that building kind of blows my mind, because it's not just athletics. It is a hub for the athletic department, but also you have sports medicine in there. You have this unbelievable facility there, and then obviously you have the training. You've got the pools, the weight room, the indoor facility, which is amazing. The idea that those guys don't have to always take the walk down to the lower fields and trudging up and down that, and having those right there where roll up the garage doors, your workout's done, you can go on the field. And
Yeah.
that it's not just a football facility, that it's available for, all the athletes, for track and indoor. It was so cool to finally see that come together. I felt like Colorado had kind of fallen behind with that quote unquote arms race, and was detrimental to certainly the football program. And then, you hear this, I think the year prior, my dad's an Air Force Academy grad. We got a tour of their new facilities, and they've always had great facilities.
Yeah.
I was like, man, it sure would be good if Colorado was able to do something similar. And I'm sure you see it day in, day out, but and it fits. It's not this gargantuan eyesore. It fits within the architecture of the campus, and it's just such a cool facility.
They did a great job on that, and Rick George has been number one. Rick gets enormous credit on that, and Rick has been very effusive in his praise for Mike Bone, the previous athletic director, to kind of get the ball rolling. And but there were people, think about. I'd been here a good number of years at that point in time, and so I started talking with people. Do you think we can get this done? When the idea first came up, and there were folks on campus who just thought there's no way it's possibly going to happen. I know they just believed because everyone had heard for many years it was coming. And so, Mike kind of cracked the door, if you will, and then Rick came on board. And when Rick laid that timeline out about how quickly it was going to happen, I'm thinking in my head, holy cow, they've been talking about this for decades and it's never happened. And now this guy's coming in and saying basically in the next 18 to 24 months, this thing's going to be here. That seems awful aggressive, and I'm not even sure if it's possible. And I said I'm a big fan of Rick because not only do I work for the guy and appreciate him as a boss, but watching what he did and how he was able to navigate that and orchestrate all of that activity happening, and obviously got a lot of help, but he was the driving force behind it, was phenomenal to me. And so you're right. I mean, traveling around the country and seeing all the campuses, CU had fallen way behind because when you think about it, yes, you had the suite level and all that was put up on the east side of the stadium there, and that was awful nice. But when it came to, from an athletic standpoint, an athletic facility standpoint, the Buffs had fallen way behind. I mean, the last thing of any major note they had done, obviously, was the Dell Ward Center. And, that was way back in 1990-91, right in that area after the championship. And so, yeah, it was becoming a chasm, that they were falling behind other programs. So to do this, and not only what they've done for football and the locker rooms are state of the art, and the IPF as you're talking about, and the training facilities, and having the sports medicine center right there. So God forbid if somebody gets hurt bad, they can take them right in. There's X-rays and CAT scans, and all those different things. But think about all the other programs. I mean, there were a lot of the non-revenue sports that did not have locker rooms in the old Dell Ward Center. Nobody had a locker room. So they'd go into, some general locker room and get dressed, take their stuff out with them. And so with all this improvement, it's elevated all the programs within the athletic department because now they've got their own locker rooms, their own facilities, whether it's men's or women's golf or lacrosse, or lacrosse, I guess, came on late, but, soccer and these other sports that, people weren't necessarily thinking about and didn't even understand they didn't have their own facilities. And so it's elevated all of these programs. And I think the entire institution is better for it. Certainly the athletic department's a lot better for it.
I agree. All right. Will is excited, I think, for this next one. So,
all right, Will, what do you got for me?
What are your thoughts on the 2021 football season?
Here we go. All right. First off, Will, I am just so unbelievably thankful we're going to have a 2021 football season, and we're going to have a full 2021 football season. And the indications are we're going to have a lot of Buff fans in Folsom Field. So maybe you guys can come back from Iowa and be at a game this fall because of what we missed in 2020. So that's number one for me. Number two, I'm so excited to see what Carl Durrell is going to do. I mean, you think about Carl getting here. He gets the job late because, Mel takes off in February. And so he's taken the job kind of behind the eight ball to begin with because, you're getting right on the verge of National Signing Day. He's got to come in here. He's got to get his staff together. He's got to cobble together a recruiting class, which he did a fine job of doing. And then about, 14, 15, 16 days, whatever it was after he got the job, COVID hits and everything is kind of swept away. And he's.
Oh, no. We lost him. Oh, shoot. I think we were just getting to the good stuff too. Let's see if we'll give this a minute or two and see if Mark can log back in. Let's send him a quick message here. Oh, there he is.
You can get close to. Did I just be there for a second?
Yeah, we lost you there. Okay, good. You're back.
Oh. All right. Don't know what happened there. Might have been an internet. Living up in the mountains here, sometimes the internet can get a bit spotty, so maybe that happened. My apologies.
No, I was
just going through all the difficulties that Carl Durrell had in terms of what he had to face when he first got here. And then the season's canceled. Then it's reinstated. Then you've got a truncated schedule, as it turns out. Now, we had a wonderful 2020 season under the circumstances, but I'm just excited the fact that Carl Durrell is going to have a full running start at this football season with a full complement of spring ball, off-season conditioning, all the things you do on a face-to-face basis with your team. And so I think that's what I'm excited about, number one. So seeing what Carl's able to do, he and his staff are able to do with a full running start to the football season. Now, from a football standpoint, guys, I'm excited about this team, especially on the offensive side. There is a lot of talent on the offensive side of this football team. Now, we just found out recently Sam Neuer entered the transfer portal. Well, between Brendan Lewis and J.T. Shrout, you might throw Drew Carter as a younger quarterback, but I think those first two are probably the primary competitors for the starting quarterback job. They're both talented as all get out. You've got an extremely talented wide receiver room. You've got three potential NFL caliber running backs on this team. You've got a large group of tight ends led by Brady Russell. So the individual parts and the skill guys are there. You now want to make sure that offensive line is able to give them some time and block for them, because if they are, and I'm confident they will be, we should have a pretty exciting offensive football team, I think, in 2021. And then there's some questions on the defensive side of the ball. We got to figure out Nate Landman coming back from an injury, and we expect great things out of a guy like Carson Wells, but there's a little bit of inexperience in the back end of that defense. The defensive front, I think, is going to be very solid. So a lot of reasons to feel real good about it. And then on top of it, you throw in one heck of a non-conference schedule before you jump into Pac-12 play. So there's a lot of things to be excited about, I think, in 2021.
Yeah, I like the competition. I'm glad we, not to discredit anything that Northern Colorado, but I'm glad we don't have Texas A&M straight out of the gate. I'm glad that there's maybe some time to work out whatever kinks before we get to go tackle A&M at I can't even keep up. Empower? It's Empower Field. Mile High. It's Mile High to me. It'll always be Mile High, even though I don't. So I know that's kind of where I think seeing what shakes out with the QB room, that's exciting. Obviously, we're at this point to see Sam, selfishly, to see him leave. But it sounds like he has a great opportunity to get back closer to home, and I think that's a very cool opportunity. I feel like we need 3 footballs on the field to get the quality running backs we've got. Seeing the young receivers come on at the end of last year, watching Brendan Rice break out was towards the end of the year was a lot of fun. So I know kind of in the same boat. The defense has some question marks, but I like the firepower. And maybe if we get into a track meet when we're at altitude, we just tire them all out and keep their defenses gassed and let our defense grow up a little bit.
No, I think it's going to be a fun season.
Yeah, we're excited for it. What'd you have, Willis?
What's your expectations for the 2021 through 2022 season for basketball?
Did you catch all that?
No, you asked me about basketball now?
He wants some thoughts on basketball this upcoming season, because we know we lost once a generational player. So love to hear your thoughts.
Listen, you should be buying stock in Tad Boyle's basketball team right now. Let's put it that way. All right. That thing is awful exciting. And yes, you lose McKinley Wright, who is a phenomenal point guard. Make no mistake about it. He will go down as one of the great buffs of all time. But Tad has got this thing loaded right now. You've got what was it, a top 20 class last year? You got a top 10 class coming in this year. This thing is loaded. You pick up a transfer upperclassman point guard coming in, and I'm not saying he's going to be McKinley Wright, but a guy that's got experience, has put up some dynamic numbers. You feel good about that. This thing is really, and the sad part about it is, guys, we don't give. Tad's had great success here. I've said frequently over the years, this is the golden era of Colorado basketball, what Tad has done and consistently winning 20 games and consistently being involved in the postseason. And you don't allow coaches in this day and age that, we expect everything to be turned around immediately. We're not allowing coaches to build programs. Mike Krzyzewski just announced his retirement. In today's day and age, Mike Krzyzewski at Duke would not only be allowed to become Mike Krzyzewski because they wouldn't have given him the time to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that Tad's going to turn this thing into Duke. I'm just saying Tad has had nice success, and I think he's ready to elevate this program because he's been given time to build it, build a culture, build a reputation, get some good players in here, and elevate everything, which then brings in better players and higher level recruits, if you will, over the course of time. And I'm glad that he's been given that opportunity because I think this thing is right now, the needle is pointing up. I think it's getting better and better. And I think the future is exceptionally bright. I'm really excited about Colorado basketball. Now, as excited as I am about what Carl Durrell's doing, he's still got some work to do to continue to build this thing. I think Tad's ready to blow the lid off this thing. And I think it's going to be really exciting here the next few years with all the young talent he's got in this program right now.
I like the idea of, as you're cultivating a basketball program, that your incoming freshmen, there are expectations. I mean, some of these, especially this class that's coming in, there are some of the highest recruited kids going all the way back to like David Harrison. I mean, you got to go back a while to find recruits that were this widely regarded. In our basketball history is, I was fortunate to be at CU for Chauncey's 2 years, and then it was a long while before, kind of building that back up. Ricardo had a few good years, but we've been blessed that there's been the patience needed to build the program, and the improvements that have gone there. Tad Boyle, just sign him up, give him that lifetime. I think we're about ready to turn the corner too. I'm super fired up for this basketball season. Now, our problem is access to watching things so I'm hopeful with the new commissioner, we start sorting out some things with the Pac-12 network and getting more exposure just as a conference, because I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but I feel like the reputation of the Pac-12 has taken a hit because no one seems to be able to watch our events. It's not the SEC where I can turn on ESPN and they're talking about them 24/7. It's challenging being on the West Coast. I know for us in Central Time Zone, those West Coast basketball games during the week are basically impossible, even when they're on, because their start so late. And it's just I hope whatever new guidance we have with the new commissioner kind of redirects that ship, that the Pac-12 can get its due and its exposure.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this. It was, we picked a bad time to have a bad number of years in the Pac-12. Number one, as you're talking about, the exposure aspect was certainly a disappointment when the Buffs joined the league and expected much better than that and haven't gotten that now for 10 years. The other thing was the Pac-12, then on top of the fact nobody could see it, hasn't had a great sustained run here for a while, both in football and basketball when you get to the postseason especially, right? Yeah. And so you had a league that wasn't getting great exposure and then not having a lot of postseason success on a regular basis. That's a bad combination for the league. A great league, the Conference of Champions, as it's called, it earned that nickname, that moniker for a reason, because it was a great conference, athletically speaking. And so it's been kind of a tough stretch here. That was, I think, then, doubly tough because of the lack of exposure. And so it's taken a hit nationally. And we're all hopeful that the new commissioner is going to do some great things. We certainly saw something from a basketball standpoint with what the Pac-12 did in the NCAA tournament, had a little bit greater success in the bowl season as well. And so, yeah, you hope things are turning around a little bit, and this league's going to start getting the respect that it traditionally has had and deserves as well.
Cool. Well, we're gonna lighten it up, so to speak, here a little bit, and get a couple, not necessarily goofy questions, but maybe a little more get to know you kind of stuff. So, Will,
what hobbies do you have?
What hobbies do I have? Well, I mentioned earlier being an outdoorsman. I like to hunt and fish. And growing up in the Midwest, I was involved with that as a kid. And then started moving around the country and got away from a lot of stuff simply because I was trying to build a career and moving around, be someplace for a year or two, then take off and move someplace else and trying to climb the ladder. And so being here in Colorado, I love to bird hunt. I love to turkey hunt. So a lot of pheasants, a lot of quail, that kind of thing. And I do like to get out. It's tough for me because of the time of year, but do some big game stuff on occasion. I fly fish. I love to fly fish. I got into that about a decade ago and just fell in love with that. And then I'm a horse guy. I've got a little ranch up in the mountains where I live. And I team rope, and I always tell people to call me a roper is an insult to ropers. I just like doing it. And so I'm not very good at it, but I love getting out there, and I love that aspect of it. I love the aspect of working with horses and understanding how they work and how to train horses, that when you're training a horse, you're actually training yourself. And it's a fascinating dynamic that you run through with horses. And so those are kind of some of the things that are my hobbies away from my family. Obviously, I've got a wife and 3 kids. I've got a grandbaby right now that I spoil nonstop, and so she's my number one hobby. But when I'm not doing that, I'm out probably this time of year, the slow time of year for me from an athletic standpoint in the summer. I'm either trying to find a stream somewhere. This isn't hunting season, or I'm messing with one of my horses doing something. And so that's kind of what keeps me busy away from the sports season when things slow down for me a little bit.
So without giving up your secret spots, where if you're going fly fishing, where do you usually find yourself? What rivers do you usually?
Well, just geographically speaking, what's easy for me where I live, I'm very close to Bear Creek, and I'm not far off of the Platte River, and so those are real easy for me to get to. So yeah, I just I've had moments where I jumped in the truck and I'm going to head down to Boulder, and I'm like, I got an extra hour. I'll swing on down a couple of spots in Bear Creek that I know about, and wet line for a few minutes. So I do that on occasion. I love getting up on the Blue River. I got some spots up there. I would love to get on the Blue River. And so that's always a big thing. I like to float to Colorado. I've done that a number of times and very much enjoy that. But there are a couple of other, I get in the park every once in a while. Got a couple of creeks up there in Rocky Mountain National Park I like to get on occasion. So, so those are probably if I'm going to really plan a day, I love getting up on the Blue. That's just a favorite spot of mine. And if things really get, planning ahead and I got my wife and my youngest son involved, there's some spots up around Yellowstone that I love to get to, around Jackson Hole. There's some great spots up there. I've gotten many times over the years but that's kind of a special treat. I really got to put some effort into planning those.
Yeah. Oh, we lost him again. Oh, we're just getting. There he is. All right. So I grew up I learned to fly fish when I went to visit family in Montana. So I had an aunt and uncle that lived right on the river bottom, and you do our chores in the morning and then go out, and you had all afternoon and evening to go fishing. So I cultivated my passion for fly fishing in Montana, even though I grew up in Colorado. I was probably a teenager before I fly fished in Colorado. But last summer, we were able to get out to Colorado.
Jeremy, I apologize. I don't know if you can still hear me. I've all of a sudden lost your audio for some reason.
Okay. Test. Let's see.
This is one of those technical aspects I'm not very good at here, if you can still hear me. All of a sudden, the audio just left me on my end.
Hold on 1 second. Let me try something. That's not working.
It's coming from this.
Yes.
There you go. I got you.
All right. All right.
Okay.
We tried it again. So I'm trying to hand down my passion. I was explaining that I grew up fly fishing in Montana and started right around Will's age. I think I was 8 or 9 years old when I started visiting an aunt and uncle that lived just north of Missoula, and I mean it was 300 yards away to go get in the water. But last summer we were able to travel back to Colorado and found a little spot up in the mountains. But we were recommended a hike to the Mohawk Lakes right outside of Breckenridge. Okay. And Will is my youngest, my middle son, Quentin. So we brought a fly rod because we heard there were alpine lakes and there were some natural, some native cutthroat that were up there. And that trip, both the youngest boys caught their first trout on a fly rod. I'll fish for bass around here and bluegill, which are pretty fun. But Will, a couple days later, we were up in Homestake, which is past Vail. There's a area up past there, so it's kind of the headwaters of the Eagle River. So up kind of high country, some streams there. We've got friends that have a cabin, so you can catch some brook and brown, and it's fun. Anyway, that was a passion of ours too, is trying to get out there and fly fish a little bit. We're going to be in Colorado later this month and spending some time in Telluride, so I'm trying to find some hot spots in that area to find some fish. So
what's your favorite?
Hold on.
I was going to say, if your boys caught their first fish, and you and I well know this, anybody's a fly fisherman out there, the tug is the drug. When you get that first pull and you get that first taste of it, that's when it can bite you bad. And so I'm glad to hear that. Congratulations, Will. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
He's ready to move on. He's got another question for you.
Sure. What's your favorite restaurant or meal?
Being a corn-fed Midwestern and potato-fed Midwestern boy, you give me some steak and potatoes, I'm pretty happy about that. And I'll give a totally unsponsored endorsement here. There's a little restaurant not terribly far from where I live in Kittredge, Colorado. So from Evergreen, if you head down Bear Creek Canyon, you're heading towards Morrison, you go through a little town down there called Kittredge. And there's a little spot there called the Black Hat Cattle Company. And Dave Rodriguez is the owner. He'll meet you at the front door wearing his cowboy hat. He'll bring you out in there, and they will make you one heck of a steak and give you a totally loaded baked potato. And that's probably my favorite restaurant right there. There's nothing sexy about it, but it is a great little spot in the world that nobody knows about. So come on up and give Dave a little credit and a little business up there at the Black Hat Cattle Company.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's I'm a pretty simple guy, Will, and that pretty much makes me happy right there.
Will's a steak connoisseur as well. We're fortunate that our children are willing and adventurous eaters, and we're not stuck with chicken strips and grilled cheese. They have palates and food that they like quite a bit. So
if you come, by the way, when you get out there for dessert, make sure you have the huckleberry bread pudding. You're not going to just be disappointed, I guarantee you.
You had me at huckleberry. Again, that's going Montana. We'd go huckleberry picking.
Sure.
I mean, we'd be purple from head to toe, trying not to eat as many as you picked, so that there was actually some left. But yeah, you could say huckleberry, whatever. I'm in. I'll eat it.
Yeah, being from Montana up there, one of my great fishing experiences, I was on the Blackfoot a number of years ago, and got up there and had number one, a great fishing day, and some of the oddest happenings of my life happened on that river one time. So I've got a great fondness for the state of Montana and some of the fishing going on up there.
It's a favorite of ours. I'm still fortunate to have family up there to go visit, and there's still fish in the water there. So
Amen.
it makes it worth it. So I know before we went live, we talked a little bit about this, but I know from following you with social media that your faith is a very important part of your story and who you are. You touched on it earlier that becoming a pastor was something that was on your plate. If you wouldn't mind just kind of sharing your faith journey, and I think it's important for people to understand that that's part of who we are and what's important for us. So if you would indulge.
Yeah, you bet. You and I are both fishermen, and in God's word, we're called to be fishers of men. And I've always taken that very seriously in my life. And I knew at a very young age, I felt called at a very young age as a boy. I didn't understand why. I didn't understand it. Didn't understand what God's word was, what it all meant. But I felt called and really pulled to the church. And obviously, like most of us, in my faith journey, I've ebbed and flowed a little bit. Sometimes as a young man was not as close to the Lord as I should have been. But when I got out on my own then, and the magnitude of the world came crashing down on me and what it all meant, and I came through some very difficult times as a young man. I'm very open about that, talking about my ministry. I lost my father to suicide when I was an 18-year-old college athlete. And that was a transformative time in my life, and kind of a dark time, a troubling time for me, trying to figure it out. Now I'm a young man, and there's nobody around. Nobody came alongside me and tried to help me understand what it means to be a man and what that journey is like. And so, for a short period of time, I did wander a little bit. But again, that tug came back on me and kept pulling me back to the church and to the Word of God. And so it's always been very important in my life. And Will, I'll tell you this. As we well know in the world, when you're very open about your faith, it's not always the most welcoming message for people a lot of times. And so as I was trying to journey into this, my faith was growing. I was a little afraid to be very public about it. And then it was probably in my early to mid 30s when I kind of felt this sense of, hey, are you either in or out? Are you open? Are you fully engaged in your faith? Are you fully immersed in it? Is it the most important thing in your life, which it has to be? Or are you not? And, in Revelations, it talks about being lukewarm and what the Lord thinks about that. He'll spit you out of his mouth. Doesn't have any interest in you being lukewarm. And so that was really a kind of a next calling for me to be more open about it. I was a little bit afraid. What would that mean? What would people think of me? What would happen to my career if I was very open about my faith? But kind of feeling that tug once again, I was faithful and a little bit apprehensive, but started being very public about my faith, and I've taken some arrows over the years as a result of that. Now, I'm very careful about my faith as Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior about when I express that. It would not be appropriate on a Saturday afternoon when the Buffs are kicking off against Texas A&M at Mile High Stadium for me to all of a sudden start, proselytizing on the air. That's not appropriate. It would not be fair to the University of Colorado and the listeners. That's not where it's for. So I keep that very separate. When I'm on the radio, when I'm on television, I'm talking about the matter at hand, the sports and the game or whatever it might be. But when it comes to my personal life on social media, those kind of things, I'm very open about my faith. I preach quite a bit. I've already had one wedding I've done this summer. I officiate weddings to do those kind of things. I talk to men's conferences, do those kind of things, and talk to men about what it means to be a man of integrity and what that means from a godly standpoint. And so it's an enormous part of my life. And I say all the time, being a sportscaster is my vocation. My faith is my passion. And, there's been a number of times where, folks on social media will drop me a message and say, hey, I didn't come to you to hear about Jesus. I came to hear about sports. And I said, well, you know what? This social media account is me. It's not, the institution. It's not the sports world. This is me. So this is what I am. Well, I'm not gonna follow you. Well, that's fine. You don't have to, and I'm okay with that. You're gonna get plenty of sports news, but this is what I'm all about. And if you sit down with me and have a cup of coffee with me someday, chances are this is where the conversation is going to go at some point in time. And so you need to understand that this is what Mark Johnson is about, not Mark Johnson, the sportscaster. This is what I'm about. And so it's of the utmost importance to me It's important within my family. It's what I talk to my kids about. It's what I talk to my close friends about. It's what I speak. Probably it wouldn't be equal in the amount of time I'm on the air talking sports as to what I am in terms of preaching and talking about my faith. But boy, it's getting pretty close over the years. And I just do a great deal of that. And that'll be something that long after the world of sports is done with me and I'm no longer broadcasting games, I will still be out there spreading the word of God and talking about Jesus and those kind of things. And so it's ultimately important. And I mentioned, coming through my father's suicide, my youngest son is multiply disabled. He's our forever child. And I'll tell you this, standing here today, that I never would have been able to navigate those major events and those impactful events as I have, as my son's birth and then his disability and all that's meant for my wife and me, what that's meant within our marriage, gone through that, gone through my father's suicide. I never would have navigated all of those successfully without being led by the word of God and what that faith means to me. So, it's supremely important to me. It's a huge part of my life.
I really appreciate your testimony, and I kind of feel I'm a teacher, so I also my platform, the way I teach is guided 100% by Jesus, but I can't preach in my classroom, and I understand that. But I think the life lessons that Jesus, how he wants us to live, I teach 8th graders. So, we got to be kind. Would you appreciate someone doing that to you? No. Okay. Well, and it is, I have to be very, very mindful of that. And I understandably, I understand that, but I really am grateful that you were willing to share your story and your faith journey. I didn't know, obviously, much of what you shared, and it's that, I guess the one thing I do kind of let seep into my classroom is let your light shine. So whatever it is that you can illuminate the world around you, you have to cultivate that and let the world see your light shine. And ultimately, are you doing something that's going to better, the immediate group of people around you, and then the broader spectrum around you as well? I guess that part kind of does navigate its way in, but
but Jamie, there was a gentleman I knew in ministry years ago, and I did a lot of stuff with Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and his business, his vocation kind of morphed into leadership. And so he started giving a lot of presentations to a number of Fortune 500 companies around the country. And I'll never forget, he told me the story one time where he was giving this presentation to a large company, and the CEO came up afterward and said, "You're a believer, aren't you?" And my friend said, "Well, yes." He said, "Because everything you talked about today was biblically based, but you didn't mention Christ in your entire presentation." I think one of the great lessons from that, and I don't ever encourage anybody to stop at just the lessons of what Jesus taught, but those lessons are great humanity leadership lessons. Loving people the way you want to be, or treat people the way you want to be treated. Loving people, caring for people, being a servant leader, putting other people before yourself. All these different things that we learn in Christianity are phenomenal human interaction lessons for all of us. Now, the next step is to understand that you accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, and what that means, and that takes things to a whole new level. But so I think what you touch upon from a teaching standpoint, from a broadcasting standpoint, let your light shine before man that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. When you go out and you love people and you care for them and you do so from a biblical standpoint, everybody reacts to it, whether they know it's Christianity or not. And that's the awesome thing about it. So we can all be phenomenal representatives within our given world without necessarily beating somebody over the head with a Bible at that time. But they fully, at some point, all of us who go out and try to do the best we can to represent the Lord with how we conduct ourselves are going to have somebody go, what What are you doing? Why do you act that way? Why do you do those things? Why do you not react like other people react? And then that becomes the opportunity then to preach the gospel to them. And I think that's the great thing about that. If you and I just represent Jesus like we're called to, ultimately somebody's going to say, I want to know more about why you are the way you are, why you do what you do. And I think that's the great opportunity for all of us.
Yep. Amen. Well said. Mark, we are so thankful for your time. Will has one last request.
All
So
right.
Will is he's an aspiring quarterback.
Okay.
He does dream of playing college football. Well, he dreams of the NFL. So we'll set those lofty dreams and goals. But let's say it's fall of 2029.
All right.
And the starting CU quarterback is Will. He was hoping he might get a touchdown call.
I think we could probably do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, you want to? I think you need to formally ask him.
So I'm throwing a touchdown to my friend Davis, who is on the same team as me.
Okay.
Okay. All right. All right.
So, and I think Mark probably has enough information there to make it work.
So Will and Davis, those are the two names, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Will and Davis. All right. All right. How about we'll have this as kind of a goal line situation, or at least a red zone situation. How's that sound, Will? Does that work?
Yeah.
Okay. So Will and Davis. And Davis is going to be a wide receiver? Or do you got one to be a running back or a tight end, or what are you thinking?
A running back.
A running back. Okay.
Okay.
No, wide receiver.
Wide receiver for this play. Okay.
All right. All right. So let's see. How about all right, Colorado comes up to the line of scrimmage. Will sets the offense. He's got Davis slot to the right. Buffs are down by 3 with 14 seconds remaining in the fourth quarter. It's first down and goal to go for the 9-yard line. Long cadence for Will. Will takes the snap. He backpedals. He scans the secondary. He swings it out the right flat. Caught by Davis into 3. Turns to the end zone. Touchdown. Touchdown, Colorado. And Colorado wins on an outstanding throw from Will to Davis. And the Buffs get victory number 1 of the 2029 season. How was that?
That was awesome.
Now let's hope that actually becomes true. Number 1, that you guys are playing for the Buffs, and number 2, I last long enough to broadcast those games. How's that sound?
Deal. Well, we appreciate everything, Mark. We got quite a bit of your time this morning, and we're very, very grateful. And we hope that people watching this back take something away from this. Hopefully, a little deeper than our Colorado chat. But here's to tight lines this summer. I hope you have many. And Will. Oh yes, Will has one more. He has one more thing that he wants to shout out. Sorry.
Yes,
So
sir.
I have a YouTube channel that we're trying to get 100 subscribers on, and its name is 501 Adventures.
Okay.
501 Adventures.
All right.
And
Tell me what you do.
so we go on like trips and we video it.
Okay.
And
You and your brothers, what do you do?
We
Create film, you create the videos, you make the videos. It's
Okay.
kind of highlighting, if you go to this place, here's a cool hike. If you go here, here's a place to go river rafting. If you
Nice.
So kind of a travel channel sort of thing.
All right.
So 501 Adventures on YouTube.
All right.
So we always like to try and shout that out for him, so he and his brothers can get a few more subscribers. If there's some stuff that we've negotiated, if they hit 100 subscribers, that they can add on to. So
Fantastic. Well, I tell you what, Will, you go ahead and tweet at me on Twitter and with a link or something there, and I'll go ahead and send that back out to Buff Nation, so maybe they can follow you and learn a little bit about where you're living there in Iowa. How's that sound?
Amazing.
Well, guys, this has been fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yep, absolutely, Mark. And maybe, who knows, one of these times we'll catch a coffee, hit your steakhouse, and go catch some fish together.
I look forward to that. And listen, I know you said you're trying to get out to Boulder for a football game every fall. Let me know if you guys are coming out this fall and stuff, and we'll invite you up to the broadcast booth and put the real broadcasting headsets, sportscaster headsets on there. We'll let you talk through those a little bit and see what that's like too. So I look forward to that if you guys come on out this fall.
He's lit up right now, Mark.
You know, one of the fun things we always do when I get somebody in there, we put those headsets on, during a recorded segment or a commercial break, and let them hear what it sounds like, and they get the sense of what it's like being on the air. And I always tell them, if somebody back in their control room just pots that up, about 1 million people are going to hear your voice, and you wouldn't believe how quickly those headphones come off when I tell people that.
I had a very short stint in radio, so
Yeah.
I was very, very aware of being on remote and like, oh shoot, we're hot right now.
Yeah, gotta be careful.
Absolutely. Mark, thank you so much. Mark Johnson, now the voice of the Colorado Buffaloes. Catch him this fall as he broadcasts the football season, and this winter for an exciting basketball season with Tad Boyle and the Buffs. Mark, thank you so much. This was awesome. I know Will's going to be trying to have me rip the audio of his touchdown call here, show his friends. So thank you so much.
You're very welcome, guys. God bless you guys, and go Buffs.
Thank you, sir. Go Buffs.